On October 26, 2018, Tyler Blevins, most commonly known as Ninja, announced he would be holding a New Year's celebration in Times Square. To set the stage, during this time, Fortnite was at its peak popularity. Kindergarten classes were hitting the gritty, and the public was starting to take notice of Blevins. He was on top of Twitch, and everyone was trying to get that #1 spot. It was the perfect opportunity for him to make his media blitz, hopping on talk shows, streaming with celebrities. But he had one last stop, the heart of America, the Big Apple, New York City. He'd make his name known during the turn of the new year, showing the world what we gamers could be, all before the world would ever even know about Skibbity Riz, Ohio. Floss, Ninja, floss. Don't stop. Don't let us down. Don't switch the camera. Oh no.
I'm not seeing enough movement.
During this moment, he had committed the most grave crime against humanity, and that was posting Cringe. We gamers would never get the respect of the real world, but instead, we were exposed like vampires in the light for what we were, cringe losers. So what is cringe? Fundamentally, cringe is an exercise in empathy. As living, breathing creatures, we go through life learning from our experiences, discovering new things, and looking back at who we were yesterday and going, oh dear God, please shoot me now. Cringe is all about taking that feeling and relating it to others as they go through those same experiences. Some in front of 1 million New Yorkers. To live is to be cringe. Otherwise, we would never even know what cringe was. So, why do I say all this? Well, recently the Borderlands movie any percent speed ran the jump from theater to streaming service, and I went to check to see how bad it could be. And I can safely say that after watching, I realized that Satan is probably real, AIDS exists, and that I'm going to die someday. So, how did we get here? What happened for us to go from a melancholic looter shooter to corporatized cringe? Well, let's go through the series to take a look at how we got here and the creative decisions that led to making Borderlands kind of cringe. Now, for this video, I'll be focusing on the story and the tone of the series, with less attention to gameplay since that's never really been the problem with Borderlands. With the exception of pre-sequel, every iteration of the series has always arguably been a step up from the game before when it comes to that. The main theme at the center of the Borderlands series is greed. What happens when we enter an age of technology that allows us to travel to other planets and we leave humanity's greed unchecked? How far will we go to serve it? And where do we draw the line? And what horrors will be unleashed on the universe as a result? This is reinforced by pretty much everything in the game. You play as 4 different characters that each want to seek the vault for its riches. Work with characters with questionable morality, consistently seek better loot, kill bandits for recognition, all while you watch the XP number go up. Now, this isn't a moral analysis of the game. I'm just stating how the mechanics of it get you in the mindset of wanting more. And when you have it, it's never enough. You're constantly thinking about what you're going to do at the next level, what gun you'd like to be doing more damage and is next in line for an upgrade, and what quests from people that need your help are going to be abandoned because the XP reward is just not worth it anymore, and it's more worth your time to dumpster dive for some dude's dirty mags. Will you brave the wastes as a hero? Or just another person out for themselves? Borderlands takes place in a universe where mega corporations reign supreme. Recently, the Atlas Corporation discovered what is known as a vault from an ancient alien race called the Iridians. What they found allowed them to amass power, leading them to the planet Pandora, where the Dahl Corporation is using prison labor to extract resources from the planet. After hearing murmurings of a vault located there, the Atlas Corporation invades, Dahl leaves, and the locals are left to fend for themselves. And in comes you, the Vault Hunter. The game starts with a sketched out sequence with Marcus, a shady businessman, accounting why you're here and the grand journey you're about to be on. A story of treasure, a story of glory, a story of ancient artifacts. And the game kicks off with the travel billboard falling apart with the skag getting hit by a bus, immediately telling you the state of the planet that you're on. You're told of ancient treasures and opportunity, but everything in sight is just, well, Shit. This game does a lot with subtle and not so subtle messaging to make you feel like that you're at a pretty low point and out of your mind to be searching for the vault. You're starting on this rundown bus and somehow you're the one that's going to find this legendary treasure. You're shown Mordecai, who comes off as a guy clearly with something to prove with his flashy maneuvers. Lilith, who comes off as a trickster character with her siren powers. Roland, who is calm and collected and just wants to keep a low profile. And Brick, who, I mean, you can guess what he's all about just based off of everything about him. I mean, the game says he's even starring as himself because the devs know it too. Just based off of their character designs, you can already tell what they play like. Mordecai attacks from long range with snipers and has his Bloodwing helping him out. Lilith has her phase walk to weave in and out of enemy range, keeping a distance while dealing elemental and SMG damage up close. Roland keeps an arm's reach distance while using his Scorpio turret for cover and damage. And Brick gets up close and personal. But the great part is you already knew that just based off of their character designs. So much creativity went into their models that all doesn't even need to be said. The armor and camo with Roland, the slim, stealthy look and the leather armor for Mordecai, the insanely muscular and balding Brick with chains as a belt, and Lilith, who seems like a mystery with her tattoos and alien powers. Each character has their own unique role and there's no guessing as to what they do. If you want a lesson in a gold standard for character design, right here is where to look. The feeling of isolation is a theme that many games play with to create a sense of immersion and investment in the world. Most famous for this would be a game like Metroid Prime. You arrive on a planet that's inhabited by various life forms and the space pirates. The Chozo, who were the only intelligent life present, are now nowhere to be found and only exist on the inscriptions of the walls. The structures tell of how their civilization fell. The isolation from all of this drives you to interact and be immersed in the world around you. Find any example of an RPG or adventure game. Rarely are you starting in a big city, but either out in the middle of nowhere or a small town. Isolation is used as a tool to slowly expand the world that you exist in. While isolation is not a replacement for good world building, it can act as a magnet to draw the player towards it. Also, it can very much draw the player towards bad world building so that they take more notice of it as well. So how does Borderlands use isolation to invest the player in the world? Well, we already went over the dinky bus in the middle of the desert and the rough and tumble looking gang, but there's a lot more happening as well. As soon as you get into picking your character, Marcus starts by roasting the whole crew, saying that Mordecai is dressed in BDSM gear and Lilith should get back in the kitchen.
And what's your story, young lady? What can you do? Perhaps you can bake us all a wonderful cake. And you, beef stick in the back.
Jesus Christ. This is the last safe place you'll be, and you're already being told by some guy that you aren't shit while you're making the main decision of the run that will determine your playstyle. The goal of this intro sequence is to pound into you that you're small, alone, and way in over your head. As soon as you get off the bus, there's a mysterious figure who starts giving you guidance. You see a rundown town in front of you with Claptrap greeting you with his overly enthusiastic demeanor. You just got here on a rundown bus where you got roasted by the driver, you're looking at a town that looks like it was abandoned, and now you have a robot from the Doll Corporation talking to you like there's no problem going on at all. All that exists right now are you, the desert planet in front of you, and behind the scenes, the corporations on some other planet that are selling you guns, gear, and don't really care about you beyond how they can use you to get richer. Here you are, all in the middle of that. And the music, oh, the music. The feeling is amplified by the Welcome to Firestone track with its strings and drums, giving you that country desert out in the middle of nowhere feel. The intro sequence is perfect at conveying everything you need to know about the game and what you have in store. It's brimming with personality, passion, and creativity. As soon as you walk into town, you're accosted by bandits, meet the only doctor who has a revoked medical license, and start on the arc to defeat the bandit leader Nine Toes. During this time, the game starts small, going around helping Claptrap, fixing machines, and killing skags and small-time bandits. During this time, you're starting to be built up as somebody who's a bit of a step above the rest, doing for the town what they couldn't do for themselves. Now you start to see the main gameplay loop. Get a quest, take on some enemies, level up, get better gear, repeat. And it does a damn good job at all of that. As I mentioned earlier, you're always looking towards the next level up and the skill point to use, that next gear upgrade, and the next $1,000 that you can make within the next 10 minutes before the deal in the shop goes away. While the beginning is very backtracky and involves a lot of long runs from place to place, it gives you a lot of opportunity to take in the world for what it is. Although on repeat playthroughs, it definitely becomes a lot less fun. You get a taste of the brilliant enemy design in this game, with each that you face having different behaviors, attacks, and weaknesses. You end off this small questline taking on the bandit leader Ninetoes and his pet Skags. When you get back to Firestone, the game introduces you to Scooter and the catch-a-ride that spawns vehicles for you. While he's a goofy character who has some quirks, he's much more down-to-earth in this game than later games make him out to be. He just comes off as some eccentric mechanic guy who doesn't have much of a filter and isn't out of the imagination of someone you can meet in real life who works in that field. I mean, obviously for a mechanic he'd still be wacky, but, you know. And that's all compared to, well, We'll go over that in future videos. But here you're introduced to the game giving you a difficult quest that you're not strong enough to take on before doing some side missions to get you familiar with each area and immersed in various aspects of the world. Whether it be knowing more about certain factions, the footprint of various corporations, the plants and wildlife, the game guides your hand towards engaging with all of it. Although it doesn't push you more than 2 to 3 side quests when it does this to you, because after all, you have a mystery to uncover. Speaking of that though, around this time you're introduced to Patricia Tanis, or her audio recordings, that is. As you pick up the echo recordings, you see someone who starts as an arrogant researcher slowly losing their sanity, giving her unique academic perspective and notes about the world around her, as well as her own mental decline as all of her colleagues get killed by the planet one by one. As you listen to the recordings, you not only start to understand how dangerous this planet is, but also how powerful you are as a player to be surviving out here on your own. Now it's time to take on your next questline, which is going up in the world to take on the bandit leader Sledge. But you need the mine key before you're able to make it to him. After you fight your way through the bandits, you arrive at Sledge's safe house, which seems to be a dull headquarters that has been overrun by bandits, giving you a look around at what once was on the planet. Even the corporations that were on this planet fall victim to it now, showing you not only how relentless Pandora is, but the scale and power that Atlas has to be able to kick Doll out. This is where you face your second boss fight, but your first real challenge against the Roid Rage Psycho. You have to kite him around the arena while dodging grenades and keeping enough little dudes alive so that you can revive yourself every once in a while. It's a fun fight, and you get the mine gate key. Why you just couldn't jump the fence or drive through it, I have no idea. Don't think too hard about it. It's time to go through Sledge's mine. At this point, bruisers have become a mainstay of the bandit faction. They have huge health bars, walk slowly at you, and can use heavier weapons like rocket launchers. As you move around the mine, you take in how extensive Doll's mining operations were. This area is massive with large shacks, conveyor belts, silos, and other rundown structures. At the end of the mine, you fight Sledge, who has a massive shield that you need to whittle down. Oh, so that was a lie. But anyway, you take him down and get the vault key fragment before you're contacted by Commandant Steele, the leader of Atlas's Crimson Lance, to turn yourself in as well as any artifacts that you found. You're moving up in the world to be on their radar now and are rewarded with access to the Doll Headlands. Now, the main goal of the Doll Headlands is to kill Mad Mel so Scooter can fix the new use stations. There's a much larger focus on runner combat, which, when you're not playing multiplayer with a friend operating the turret, can be a little bit excruciating. I usually just found it more efficient to just get out of the runner and shoot them with my guns because of how clunky the runner felt without someone manning the turret on top. I get the feeling that they were going for the wide open desert, the unhinged bandits, and the main antagonist of the area literally being called Mad Mel, but it feels like it only works in multiplayer, which is kind of unfortunate. There is one side quest of note where you take an elevator to an alien ruin and fight an Iridian Guardian for an artifact as well as an Iridian weapon. The Mad Mel boss fight was also not great. It just felt like without any cover in the area, the optimal strat was just to sit back at the ramp and snipe people. It was kind of boring because you would just get dumpstered instantly as soon as you ran into the arena with the runners firing rockets at you. Once again, this is more of a single player issue, but they also put single player into the game for people to play, hence the player part of the phrase. You're granted access to New Haven, which suffices as the main hub area of the game, with all the big NPCs like Marcus, Scooter, and the leader Helena Pierce residing there. You hear mention of the way ahead to a town called Sanctuary being blocked because Helena doesn't want her citizens to die from the patrols of a bandit leader named Baron Flint. I guess moving up in the world also means clashing with bureaucracy and conflicting interests now. Shit's too real, man. But after you do some local favors, you do get cleared to speak with Tannis at her dig site at least. She tells you to talk to Crazy Earl, who wants you to clear out some bandits and spider ants for him. And of course, to grab him some booze. You learn that Earl sold the key to a bandit named Crom. So, on to the next bandit chief. On the next leg of the journey, you fight down the river past some turrets where I died a lot more than I would like to admit, and get to Crom's Canyon. You move up through a series of camps and bridges before you finally face down with Crom at the top of the canyon. Honestly, this is one of the most fun fight sequences in the game. You're constantly moving up from plateau to plateau and ducking behind cover while Crom is pinning you down with his turret before you finally get to him and take him down, getting you the next piece of the vault key. The next piece is located in the Trash Coast, with the inhabitants of Janustown being between you and the vault key. You talk to Taylor Cobb, who tells you to remove his brother Janus, a brutal leader, from power, and it would be best that Helena Pierce doesn't know about it. When you take Janus down, you're told to spread the word and go to a container where you get ambushed. Turns out, he's even worse than his brother, and there was a reason he wanted to keep his activities a secret. After playing through the game again and paying extra attention to the story, it gave me a much bigger appreciation for Helena Pierce than before. While she might seem annoying to you when you play through the game for the first time, on subsequent playthroughs, it genuinely seems like she's a character that's doing her best to hold New Haven together, and you're the person coming in messing up things for her and putting people at risk. Now she has to cater to you to get you out of her hair. After you kill Taylor Cobb, you arrive at the Trash Coast and fight the Rack Hive, where you find the third vault key piece. When you return to Tannis, you're told of the fourth and final piece that's held by Baron Flint, who resides in the Salt Flats. First though, you need to rescue a claptrap that's held by the Crimson Lance in Old Haven. This is your first showdown with Atlas as you move through the town and weave from cover to cover against the armored soldiers to complete the quest. This is where your corrosive weapons come in handy. At the Salt Flats, you defeat some bandit patrols before you get into the camp. Once you get to the top, you face waves of enemies before Baron Flint comes down to fight you and you get the final... Wait, what? Where's the key? Turns out there were only 3 pieces and Tannis betrayed you. Now the ecosystem is shut down, turning off all communications between you and your allies. It's time to fight your way out through the Crimson Lance. Now you need to take the fight to Atlas and get some answers. You fight your way through the hideout and find Tannis. Turns out sending you after Baron Flint was Commandant Steele's idea, and now she has the vault key. I don't really understand the character motivations here, and the game doesn't seem to explain what the character motivations are, so yeah, I guess don't think about it too much. You now have to move through the various outposts, turn the Echo Network back on while fighting the Crimson Lance. You see them in battle with the Iridians. You turn on the Echo Network and get back in contact with Angel, and make your way to the Descent. Moving through the ruins, taking down the Iridians and Lance alike before finally arriving at the vault. This sequence does a climax properly. There's chaos, stakes, and powers beyond your control fighting over something ancient and primordial, and you're caught right in the middle of it, fighting your way up the mountain before you finally arrive at the vault. However, you're too late, and Steele got to the vault first. She prepares her men to go in, but is impaled by the monster that emerges from the vault. Now it's up to you to finish what you started. I don't have any complaints about this boss fight. There's ample cover, none of the attacks feel unfair, and it's a great fight to end off a great game. And as you're congratulated on your victory, you see that whoever was instructing you this whole time was being broadcasted over a Hyperion satellite, setting up the plot for Borderlands 2. Now, while this game isn't perfect and suffers from things such as clunky vehicle controls, not enough information being conveyed to the players in the stats of weapons through things such as reload speed and shield recharge delay, and weapon manufacturers not feeling super distinct from each other, it's undeniable that Borderlands is a title that brought the looter shooter genre into the mainstream. While you had games at the time such as Fallout 3 and Hellgate London, games that combined RPG elements with shooter gameplay were very few and far between 15 years ago. Oh god, 15 years ago. While we might roll our eyes now, the concept was very novel at the time, especially combining those elements in such a digestible and accessible manner for the average player. This game accommodates to so many different playstyles and players and is super easy to understand. But I think everyone knows that. It's undeniable how successful the franchise is. What the first game doesn't get enough credit for is the great world building, characters, and dark tone and way of life that people living on Pandora just kinda accept, and the way that the game pushes you to interact with it all. Now, while future games in the series have absolutely improved on the formula, if you haven't checked this one out and are looking for a new RPG game to get lost in, that isn't hard to learn, and is relatively short and holds up really well, I mean, what are you waiting for? The sequel?